Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service.
Here we are again at the end of a rainbow.
Picking the brain of the artists who created Paraffin, Save Yourself, Haram, and most recently I Told Bessie would have sounded like a pipe dream just a year and a half ago. But now, off the strength of the love and support you, the listener, have provided me, this past weekend, I was able to sit down with none other than South Jamaica Queen's Illuminates, where we were able to dive into his one-of-a-kind lyricism, his creative relationship with Backwoodz, his spirituality, and his latest solo album and album of the year contender, I Told Bessie. To be honest, I didn't even need to really record this intro. This is fucking Illuminates. There's no extra hype required. This is a fantastic conversation with one of the best rappers of all time. Let's get into it. The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today, Lucid?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I respect the work, respect your contributions to the art form. Anybody who follows the show know how much I love Armand Hammer, Lucid, Backwoodz Studios, anything related to which that whole scene is doing. So this is just a true honor. I'm really happy to have you on. And first off, I really want to get into your style of rap. You rap in a way that it feels like you're plucking words from the sky and then like reciting it to us, the listener. It's really unique. It's a kind of lyricism that engages me on a spiritual level, but as well as like an intellectual level, because you're actually communicating real topics that actually make me think and are like rooted in reality, which is something that I find is really interesting. And the way you do it all is in a way that's very unorthodox, and like how you use your voice and how you present your voice hold different kind of tones. And it's this style of yours that I want to dig into, because I feel on Bessie, this is the one that I feel like you flourish the most. Like there's songs where I feel like you've hit a pocket that I've never heard anybody hit before. And in my review of the record that dropped last month, it led me to say that, you know, sometimes you perform your raps as if they're chants or mantras. Like you use repetition in a really particular way. So it has me wondering, how much has the art of like pure poetry influenced your rapping style? And like, do you actually consider yourself in a way a poet as well?
I don't know if I would maybe consider myself a poet. It's funny when people say that, but I guess because of what I do, then that does make me that. But I'm a rapper, so rappers are poets. So yeah, I am a poet. You know, some people don't even like to consider rappers poets. You know what I mean? I feel like it's like inelegant or something like that, which doesn't make it any less poetic. But you know, viewpoints. But thank you. That was mad compliments. But I feel like you're right. on Bessie, I don't know. I was just having a lot of fun, like making this record. I had a lot of fun writing the rhymes. Like people will say what they will about like the content or whatever, but like the flow and like how the words are styled against the beat. For me, there was a lot of playfulness. There was a feeling of like playfulness. I'm just having fun with it. So like that's where it comes from. You know what I mean? Like unexpected pockets maybe, or like how I might like use my voice in a chorus or even within a verse and like start layering things in a particular way. It's really just like playfulness is like keep myself interested. You know, I could spit a verse straight without any sort of maybe inflection or layering or real style, like rap style too. I can spit it like straight with, but then, you know, I'm not sure if that would have kept me interested. It didn't. When I was in the studio, I just try it in different ways. I like to not punch my verses. I saw some technical shit. I'd like to run through a verse like from
Nice.
start to finish, and possibly like a song from start to finish. I'm gonna have to do it live at some point, so just do it now.
You do the whole song live,
We'll do
like
the
the whole
whole
song
song
front to
from
back?
top to bottom, from top
Wow.
to bottom. I mean, Bunny Chow was one take. That was one take from top to bottom. It's just like you're gonna do it live eventually, so you might as
Hmm.
well just get familiar with the record. It's your record. These are your thoughts, right? Like
Yeah.
this is everything that you've like, sort of downloaded and then like upchuck back on a beat. So this is me. I should be able to do this, and it's always been that way from like day one of like me even just like being in my room. Like I'm thinking about that. I haven't thought about this in a while. Just like when I first started rapping and be like, yo, had the idea of like, well, let me try like, what does it sound like if I record it? And I remember I had like my dad used to work out and like have a weight bench,
Mm.
a bench press and shit. And I remember, one end was the bench press and the other end was like this weird kind of like a lat pull down thing. So I remember
Mm.
I had like really like old belt drive turntables. I had the beat playing on there through like a cassette, and I had a mic and like a little old mixer my uncle gave me, and I would have the mic hanging from the lat pull down machine. So it's like the mic's in front of my face. I can stand up and I'm rapping. And just because it was tape, there's no punching, it's just a cassette tape, just hit record and go. Like that's where it started. Just get the song done from top to bottom. You can't stop and like punch in and fix mistakes. Just get it right the first time, Try to.
I think that like organic feel, because of the way you do that, it comes across. I'm even thinking of that song you mentioned, Bunny Chow. That's the one, if I had to choose, that exemplifies exactly what I mean on that record, because I mean, it's amazing. But like it also, I think it really resonated similarly. Like I was watching a Mike Seatown review of the record recently, and he made the almost the exact same comment I had made, and I definitely didn't watch it until like literally yesterday. I'd already done the review, and the same thing I said about Bunny Chow is like the way the pockets you chose to rap in just wouldn't be the ones that I would have thinking I would think a rapper would typically go in, and it's just so fly. Like
Yo,
it's
shout
just
out Seb Bash. Shout out Seb Bash. Because
that
I
beat's
heard
one of the
that,
best things I've ever heard.
yeah,
Period.
as soon
Like
as I heard that beat, it was like I want it, but also like for the reason why I like the pocket. It was just it was so like very traditional boom bap to me, but also just not. It was tweaked. The rhythm was like it was a little more intricate. And then, it allowed me, for me, in my ear, it just like I could dance a different dance on this kind of a beat. And like shout out Seb Bash.
man, shout out Sebastian. Even like
Yeah.
the way the song ends, like the way you like the last lyrics, the way it kind of cuts off just seems again odd. I was almost like, oh, the song's over, but it's so
Yeah.
sick. Like it's you just kind of let that drop, and oh, I love it.
Yo,
Um,
that was, to be honest, like that was again Seb Bass. That's just how the beat was. That's just how
yeah,
he had the beat like structured. I didn't ask for any changes. What he gave me is what he gave me, and that became the end result. I love that. Making rap for me is like it's at its best, at its most fun, it's spontaneous. It's like not really thought about. It's just kind of like you work with what you have and you just do what you do in this time frame, and then what that is what it is in the end.
mhm.
And that's my favorite way to work. Yeah, we didn't do anything to Seb's beat. Like how he sent it, that's the demo version. Willie Green just beefed it up. You know what I mean? Just made it bigger than what it is. But yeah,
And another thing I've been really wanting to ask you about is, we all know your music, is lyrically dense, it's challenging, all that good stuff. But I personally find like when I listen to like I'm on Twitter or I'm like reading the kind of comments about music that obviously I'm in those conversations, I find people tend to fixate on the quote unquote complexity of your music in a way that I find a bit strange. Like people act like your lyrics are this impenetrable puzzle to crack while also kind of losing sight of the musicality and the style, like all the stuff you just talked about. So I'm wondering, is this a sentiment that you also share that like does it surprise you or even bother you when people say things along the lines of them not understanding what you're saying in your music?
Hmm. I think a few things about that. But I think like the first thought is like we just always want to compare things. We try to make sense of shit. Like we get it, we receive things and we just want to make sense of it, however your brain makes sense of it. And I think when people like whatever, they classify my music in these ways, complex or like impenetrable, or I think they're just comparing it to like whatever is popular. So I guess like the baby or like I don't know, whoever's popular out here
Mhm.
rapping right now, you know? So obviously, like, yeah, compared to somebody like that, I could see that, but it doesn't mean that like you can't enjoy it or get into it or you know, just spend time. Also, like I believe you don't have to even understand everything that you like enjoy.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what I mean? It's such like a crazy like egocentric like position, I think. You know what I mean? To just be like, well, if I don't understand it, it's stupid. Or I don't understand it, it's to be like ignored. It's kind of bullshit, you know, just on a life level. But I don't know. I can't really even like I can't pay attention to that because that would change what I would do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Trying to like make myself easily digestible. I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time. And yeah, I've heard this my entire, you know, for as long as I've been rapping. 20 years ago, it was just like, yo, you're so ahead of your time. You're so ahead of your time. And now it's like, it's too complex. It's too this, it's too that. I know, but people seem to dig it. And I love that. I try to write in ways that like, I don't know, it just suspends like narrative in a way. So, and when you do that, like people can like make up their own meaning for like what I'm saying. Like it'll have my meaning, right? As I'm the one that's creating it. But like when I put it out in the world, someone would hear it and it becomes their thing. It's loose enough for them. It's easier for them to grab onto. And like I love that. I love that. But also like, firstly, you really don't have to understand everything that you enjoy. You know, if
Yeah,
you
it's like a
enjoy
weird
it,
thing
you
when
enjoy it, you're
people,
gonna keep going back for it. You know, and as you keep going back for it,
yeah.
you'll learn. You know, you'll
Yeah,
understand things in different ways. You know,
not
just
everything has to be logical. Like it doesn't have to have your brain, like, because you're right. That's
uh,
exactly, I feel like it's such a natural thing. We all want to make sense of the world. So we like, oh, well, this line means this. It's like it
yeah,
doesn't need to be a math equation. It
it
doesn't,
doesn't.
it doesn't need to be. It can be, but it doesn't need to be. And that's fine. And for me, I feel like me and experimental music, I'm not usually the type, like for me at least, I'll say like the part I usually have a hard time understanding isn't really the end result of like the music we as listeners consume when we press play on an album. What does baffle me and inspires me and just confuses the hell out of me is the creative process to get there. Like, how the fuck did the artist even think of making music like this? That's what comes to my mind. That's the part that I'm like, damn, like what? Like, how did Elucid know that, inserting this sound of a baby crying into the beat of a thousand faces would sound so good? Like,
Uh,
that truly baffles my mind. And those kind of decisions is what like really interests me. But it's not like the end result. It's not like, oh, I don't understand this song or I don't understand anything. It's more like, how did he get there? Because that's really cool to me.
yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. That is a
And
great think about it.
I want to get into some, like, as you said, like, we're talking about people not under, like, having a hard time or kind of having these weird, obtuse ways of looking at your music. But you have, and with Woods, with Armand Hammer, especially, like, you've really risen to another level in popularity in the recent years, which is obviously fantastic. We all, like, so many people love your music. That's great. And I want to particularly get into that using one of your lines off Soft Gold, off the White Label record.
Ha,
You
I forgot you
say,
have that record.
what'd you say?
I forgot you have that record.
Oh yeah, I found it found its way to me. I'll just say that. Um, you say somewhere between happy to be here and y'all should have been knowing. I won't abandon the moment, control my only opponent. I found that one really enlightening because it made me think like how has it felt wrestling with those kinds of thoughts as you've kind of risen in profile in recent years, seeing a bunch of fans that have only caught wind of you within the last, let's say, like last year and a half since Haram dropped, and not being aware of all the great work you've put out previously, like, does it, how do you feel, like, how do you reckon with that? Because in this line, it seems to be something that's on your mind.
Yeah, I think, in that moment, we're making this record, and we're making white label, and it's just like, oh, it's gonna be this European exclusive 12-inch vinyl with no cover to be sold on our European tour. And like, that was just big to me. It was just really cool. And it was just like, damn, man, my 17-year-old self would like be totally into this and would be proud of like who I would be, years down the line. So that's the mindset, like, going into it. But I'd be lying if I didn't, like, it's true. That first part of the line, it's like, I'm not gonna lie, man. There was like an anger at times. Like that feeling washes over me. Anger when I think about, like, damn, man, y'all actually should have been knowing. Like, y'all, like, what do you mean? Like, what, y'all weren't like paying attention? Like, what's different? Like, I didn't change, y'all changed.
Exactly.
But also, like, that's bitter. That's whack. Like, also, I'm grateful for this shit. Like, whatever, like, I'm here now, and like, this is what's happening, and like, it's a crazy, like, position. It's like a big blessing to be here. Like, I make rap music. That's what I do for a living. Like, I make rap music. People like to hear like things that I make. That's incredible. That's, I love it. So it's just like, I don't want to be bitter, but it's also like that exists because, I've done this for a long time. I've like sacrificed a lot to like, make music, despite a lot of things, many things. And, I've seen a lot of people quit. I've seen a lot of people like shift their focus away from making music or chasing a dream, like wanting to make a dream actually happen. Like, people stop doing that because life,
Exactly.
shit's hard. But yeah, I'm still here. So, I'm very grateful to be in that position. But yeah, thank you. I haven't heard that in a while. I should go listen to that record.
That's the one that I think, is that a Seb Bash beat too?
Yeah.
Dog, man, that guy is just crazy, man. I like, on White Label he showed out, obviously on Bessie he did, and then now I've, like, looking back, I have known that I have heard some of his stuff before, like that. Some of my favorite beats on that Evidence last record was incredible. And there's something about the way he has this like weird warped griminess, but it is still, like you said, boom bap kind of in its elements. It's crazy.
He could definitely describe like how he does it better, but it's like, it's just samples, obviously, and then like there's like a lot of human elements at play, whether it be like synthesizers or just like strange sounds added into a beat, and like he's playing it in this particular rhythm, like playing against rhythms. Like, he's got a really, really strong ear.
Focusing on that kind of feeling again of just kind of like being here now, being at this place in your career where a lot of people now are really fucking with your shit, like the White Label frenzy, I'm sure, like, as you said, that's just, it is wild. Like, it's crazy. Like, when was there ever a point in the last, let's say, couple years, really since 2020, where you felt like, oh, things are going to change? Because it feels like there's been some kind of tidal wave change with not only you, not only Woods, but like all of Backwoodz related artists, like everything that's dropping, Frem Rock, Curly Castro's last record, Steel Tip Dove's record, they've all, I feel, done very damn well.
Yeah. I can't explain it. I don't know. I had that. I feel like I have that feeling about everything that I do. I always feel like, yo, this is gonna be the one. It's gonna change everything. Well, here we are. You know what I mean? Like, I felt that way for the longest time. Osage, especially. I love that record. I really thought that was gonna save yourself. I don't know. It's just the time. It's just the time that we're in. And thankfully we're like making things like as a team, as a roster, as Backwoodz, like artists, like we're just making things that people are responding to. This lane is like kind of wide open in like a whole way that was different from when I was maybe like 18, 19, 20 years old. The game was like, it was just different. the rap industry was like different. And it allows. I'm happy for this pocket that we're sitting in right now. You know, I'm not I'm not silly, but yeah, we're in this pocket, and yeah, I have so many, many more plans for like what's happening next. Yeah, we'll see.
And so let's get into Armand Hammer a bit. And I want to start particularly at the beginning, specifically how it all began. What was
Yeah.
the genesis, the spark for you guys to decide to join forces and become this entity known as Armand Hammer?
History will absolve me. I met Woods during the recording of that album. We were in the studio and he played Pompeii. And that shit blew me away. And then I recorded, I don't remember which one was first, but maybe Sour Grapes. That song Sour Grapes. And then there was Freedmen's Bureau, I think. Those two songs, we did those that night as well. Yeah, from that moment on, it was just like, let's make more records. And we kept making records, and it was like, yo, we should just be a group. And then race music happened. And it was just like that. It was like real, we met at a live show that I was performing at. He just liked it and was like, yo, hit me up, blah, blah, blah. And just like that. They're real simple,
Yeah, it seems very organic and like genuine kind of connection. And
yeah.
like, to me, you're in the stratosphere of artistry where I'm sure you could pair up with a bunch of different rappers and it would be great. But obviously 5 albums, a compilation album, EP and mixtape later, it's clear that you and Woods have something special, like a special kind of chemistry that's undeniable. So in your opinion, what's the main reason why you and Woods work so well together as a duo?
I think Woods is a really dope solo artist on his own. And I think he'll say that for me too. So I think when you're working like as a group, like I think that baseline of respect should be like there. You know what I mean? Because I think from there, it just becomes about like challenging like myself or yourself or ourselves, like when we're making records, because it's like, like Woods are gonna come with some crazy shit. And it's just like, yo, how you gonna like stand next to that? Like, you can't really slack. You can't slack off because like Woods has just gotten better. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I got a little bit, but I definitely know Woods has gotten like way sharper in the past 5 years or so, 3 years, even. Like so it's like, how do I like compete? We always, healthy competition, man. It's always that. Like who's got the best verse, who I think that's important. I think it's like also cool, like even how we like might start making songs. It's just like, can I make something that would inspire him to write to? You know what I mean? Like that's how some Armand Hammer song, a lot of Armand Hammer songs are made. You know what I mean? I'll just get a beat or he'll get a beat. Somebody will get a beat, right? If you feel inspired, move on it. Play it for this person. I need to get a reaction out of you. Can I draw a reaction out of you? You know what I mean? Like that's, if I get Woods like excited about making a record, then we're on a good track. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's just playfulness, man. Competition is playfulness. That's what really keeps me involved. Like working with really talented people who are inspired and have like a sense of just like, yo, I want to be the nicest. I thrive in that kind of like environment,
Mm-hmm. And I heard before in some recent interviews, I don't know if it was with you or with Woods or both of you, but I think one of you were talking about how, like, for instance, Woods, his thing that he loves to do whenever you guys make records together, make albums specifically, is like he's all about the sequencing. Like he's the guy who puts the track listing together.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you think your role, like, if there is a kind of like a natural role you kind of play in the creative process for an Armand Hammer record? Like, what do you think that is? Is it like song concepts? Is it like beat selection?
I pick the best beats.
Makes sense.
I pick beats that'll take
too.
Woods. I'll pick beats that'll take me out of my comfort zone, but also definitely Woods out of his comfort zone. Yeah, I like choruses and hooks. I contribute to the sound in ways that you may not even know, like how I'm like layering sounds on beats and like effects that I'm using on vocals and beats and drops. And I'm just interested in like just crafting like songs to emote particular vibes and moods. Like I do that, Woods is the sequencer, right? And the sequence, if it were a movie, like it's scene by scene from start to finish. This is how the story is told. But there are other elements within the movie that make the movie the movie. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I'm doing everything else, dealing specifically with the music and the creation of the music and the sculpting of the music. I'm really I really like that role.
And what do you think has been something that you've learned from Woods over the years, and what do you think he's learned from you?
Oh man. I don't know. You should ask him that question. What he's learned from me. I don't know.
I have an idea, but I want you to go first.
I think Woods has shown me consistent like the value of like an idea. And I think that comes from like knowing how like he maybe edits his raps sometimes. And like the ability to like value like an idea. And it's like it may not be like whatever today, but you can come back later with fresh eyes, stand at a different side, look at it, like I have a totally fresh like perspective. And I think that's something for me personally. What I think I've learned from Woods.
Well, the thing I was thinking that he definitely learned from you, and especially the way you kind of said it, especially because you are the one who's typically picking the beats, or you're the stronger influence when it comes to choruses, those kinds of things. I think your handle on sound must have been something he's been influenced by, because especially in the last, I'd say, 3 years, particularly from Brass onwards, maybe Hiding Places onwards, like his songwriting and the production on his records have definitely improved. Like that's been probably I think I agree his writing's gotten even better, but something about like the
Overall,
choruses,
sure.
whether it's himself or someone else, like they're just hitting a lot harder. And I bet that must be something to do with working with you so much.
I mean, he might say the same thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, again, like we work closely together. So it's like we do live shows together. So it's like you see when you pick things out into a live sphere, like you're able to see like how people respond to things like in real time. And you bring that back into the studio, and if you're diligent, your songwriting should get better as you play out more, I think. But yeah, I could definitely see that in Woods. I agree with you. In the past, I would say 5 years when I really saw this sort of like climb. And all the records he's put out in the past 3 to 5 years for sure, it's gotten much iller. It was
Yeah.
always dope from the jump. Like I said, Pompeii knocked me down. Like I had never heard a rap song with
That shit
that
is
sort of
wild.
subject matter, and then just like this level of intensity. Nah, man. So yeah, he's been doing it, but yeah, for sure.
And before we get into some of the solo work that I really want to dive into, the last kind of Armand Hammer related thing I want to talk about is Haram. Like that's an inescapable kind of portion of my rotation since it dropped in, I think, March of 2021. Is that, yeah.
2020.
Haram dropped in, no, it dropped in 2021. Am I wrong?
Maybe.
No, because Small Bills dropped in 2020, right?
2022. Yeah, Small Bills dropped in 2020.
And Haram was after. Brass was like December. Yeah, it was 2021.
Yeah.
Okay. You
Yeah.
made me think I was going crazy for a second. So obviously that one, the big kind of difference between that record and a lot of others, that you collabed with one producer, being the almighty Alchemist. I know there's a lot of things that we could talk about and kind of wax poetic forever about the Alchemist, but if you could just pick like one thing, like what would be the most kind of special quality that you feel the Alchemist brought to the Armand Hammer recipe, the Armand Hammer sauce?
I think just like willingness to like bend. I think willingness to just sort of like he is the Alchemist. Like he could just like do, whatever he wants. He works with everybody. He's like the Alchemist. He could have a way bigger fucking ego about like his music and like how he thinks things should be done. He could do that and people would understand it. but he didn't. Like and he was just like, yo, I'm trying to make shit in y'all world. And I was like, oh, word. So like there's this like, yo, I want to work with you. So it's like there was like a shared like vision. He could send a bunch of beats like, nah, if you don't like it, it doesn't even matter. Like I'll just add more, just keep sending more, making more. And that's what happened. And I think that like just that particular attitude, the way he went about it was just like kind of just like, yeah, unfortunately, because it was like pandemic, like we didn't make the album like in person. Like we weren't in the same room. So it's more like just sending mad beats and just letting us pick this particular vibe. And then when we picked this thing, then we were able to like make it like our way. It's just like, yo, just like showing up and ready to like, yo, be selfless in like this team effort of like making a cool rap record, you know? When he has like this legendary status and we're just like this kind of old New Jack guys, you know?
Were these beats things that he had made specifically for Armand Hammer?
Yeah, a lot of them were. I know that he does. And Woods told me the other day, he talked to Al recently, and he was just like, he's been setting aside beats for Armand Hammer. You know, I think, you know, he gets requests from, you know, a lot of people, like, I want this particular beat. But I think, you know, for us, he kind of has this idea of like what he thinks we like and just saves things on the side for us. And again, like much appreciated.
I mean, I think it's the biggest compliment ever, because that's actually something that and a lot of people have made that remark, that the Alchemist could have been like, hey guys, come over here to like, even though he's obviously very prolific and versatile in his own right, the beats he made for Haram were not what he has normally done, even if he does get experimental from time to time. And I feel like that's remarkable that he trusted your vision to be like, hey, let me come over here and let me make something for you, versus like, hey, I'm the Alchemist, you do what I say. That's like a real shows the give and take that I think is required in collaboration. That's really beautiful.
That shit makes, and that made me excited, like hearing that, you know. That's just like, I see freedom when you start collaborating with people with this type of like vision. Yeah, man.
Okay, I want to get into, before we even get into Bessie, this amazing record from 2022, from this year, I want to start with Save Yourself, your first Backwoodz solo debut from 2016.
Yeah.
And, you know, in contrast with Save Yourself, that I felt was very claustrophobic and urgent sounding musically, the tone of this latest record, Bessie, feels a lot more weightless and kind of like at peace. And you mentioned playfulness before, which I think is like a really perfect word for kind of like what I felt. You know, lyrics from Bessie, like words mean things but don't have to. There'd be no blues if I was blameless. Like those come to mind in particular because they just feel like it's very mature and kind of like accepting or at peace. So looking back at 2016 to now, what has been the biggest change or the biggest changes in your life from then until now that you feel like impacted your music the most?
Wow. 2016 feels that feels like eons ago. That feels so long ago. I was in like just in life, just a different person. Save Yourself, I think at its core was a breakup album. At its core was a breakup album. It was recorded right at the end and definitely like the after of like a long-term relationship I was in. So that influence is there, even though there are a couple of like explicit, maybe like references to that or even like songs. But yeah, at its core, it's a breakup album. My living situation was very different. And then Bessie, 6 years later, you know, it's the total opposite. You know, I have love with a partner and I have a child. Let me think. The timeline, if I'm correct about the timeline, yeah, I even found out I was having a second child during the recording of Bessie. Like,
wow.
You know? So yeah, life is just I've done a lot of living, you know, in 6 years, a lot of living. So I think that the lyrics may have reflected that, you know. That's really cool to hear. that you received it that way. The lyrics definitely reflected that. You know, I've never stopped. Also, I've been like obviously like busy. You know what I mean? I'm making records with some very talented beings out here. You know, for that length of time. So yeah, yeah, big difference, man.
And one of the major differences between Save Yourself and these past both solo records you've dropped, as well as I guess not considering some of the instrumental records you've done, which obviously you produced, things like that, but like obviously the Armand Hammer work and things like that, though Save Yourself was 90% roughly produced by yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely like a very notable difference in your recent work, especially the last 3 years. Is this something that you'd ever want to come back to and make another full length self-produced album? And like, why do you feel you've moved away from that in recent years?
Yeah, I definitely it'll happen at some point. Making a record that way is really tough. And maybe at the time when I made Save Yourself, I don't know if I thought about it that way because I had a lot of time. I had a lot of time for myself. And time is just different. I have a different relationship with time these days. So it requires a lot of it to make a record that's self-produced. I still make sounds, I still loop things, I still make beats, but I don't really think of them as something for me to rap over these days. Nowadays I hear other people doing things to it, or it just kind of like stands alone as some instrumental sort of DJ thing, which is like what I've always wanted. I wanted that own particular lane too, because like even playing live shows, you know, for the past few years, it's been just a lot of Armand Hammer on the road things and not solo type performances. So when I obviously like it's a 2-man group, like now my catalog becomes shorter, you know. So it's like, how do I make a live solo show? And just expressing, like I make beats, I make soundscape type things, and doing it live is exciting for me as well, so just trying to do a little bit more of that. But I don't know, at some point there will be a record at some point, for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that, especially when we're talking about like newer fans joining the fold. Like I say, Save Yourself is a classic and people got to check that out. Shit Don't Rhyme No More is great, but I would love people to hear you as a producer too in like a real kind of full length picture. That'd be amazing. That'd be really amazing.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned it, you've been very busy since the release of Save Yourself. It's not like you've dropped no music for the last 6 years.
Right.
You've been insanely prolific. You dropped Shit Don't Rhyme No More in 2018 and then like a re-release in 2019. Obviously the Armand Hammer records, but also Small Bills with Alaska. That's great. Nostrum Grocers with Rap Ferreira. It has me wondering what compelled you to release I Told Bessie in this particular moment now in 2022. And was this project something that you was it just a fact of, I'm really busy and I have all these other records to make? Or was it, I needed more time to kind of like accumulate life experiences and get inspired to kind of finish this?
Yeah, I think I knew I always wanted to do a solo record, after Save Yourself, like trying to make a solo record. But like things started like taking priority, and like obviously Armand Hammer like really took priority. I remember like a specific summer in 2017 because that's when like shit was really rolling or setting up. Like, we were pushing that ball. It was approaching the summit. We was gonna knock that. I'm losing where I was gonna say, but in that summer of 2017, in that summer, like or like spring and summer, Paraffin was recorded, Rome was recorded, Nostrum Grocers was recorded.
Oh shit.
All, so that was just like, and then things became what they became. And, as shit has gotten busier in the past couple of years, Woods was like, yo, you should just put out a solo album. You should just put out a solo album. The momentum is kind of crazy. Like people kind of want to hear it. I think it'll do well. And I had that idea for a year and then didn't really move on it. Started some things, abandoned some ideas, making songs. But yeah, the second year, this year, we're in 2022, the end of 2021, that fall into like the new year, early part of the new year. Yeah, man. super inspired. And because of the beats, I was getting so much crazy beats from Child Actor, Seth Bash, August Fanon, like Late Edition, Kenny Siegel. I was just getting a lot of ill shit that was just like really fall into this particular pocket. So yeah, it came together pretty quickly. But yeah, it was all Woods. Like, yo, you just do the record now, man. It made sense. It made sense.
Oh, I'm glad he kind of gave you that little push, because it's great. And I think I also really appreciated, like, when this dropped, it dropped with all the merch too. That's something, like, as like a fan, it's really nice when you kind of like see all the options. You kind of, and there was some beautiful, like the wax is beautiful, but you also had like the shirts from Gang, the poster, like the cassettes, like everything was super, very much like laid out perfectly.
It's just like, you know, just like, yeah, the momentum of things, you know what I mean? It's just, we're just at this particular place. So it's just like, I don't want to put out this record in the same way that I put out records in the past. I got to be a little bit more, I have a little bit more resource. Like, let's just do that. Again, I'm working with some like super amazing, talented human beings. And it's just like, yo, let's just do it now. Let's just do it now, you know, and working with Gang on those teas is just like, of course. I've loved his visual like language from the first time I saw some of his things. The East Side power violence shit, all those hoodies and like tees from like back in the day. Like, so yeah, I'm proud of this record and all that's happened. Alex Richter, you know, with the poster, all the crazy photos. Yeah.
And so, keeping with I Told Bessie here, one of the things that I remarked in my review of the album that really had felt very moving was the fact that I Told Bessie felt very much like a spiritual experience, and even more so than your previous records. And one thing I really loved from a recent interview you did with Cabbages, you remarked in your relation to your church background, and I just like put the quote up. I'll read it because I think it's really cool. You said, at the core of a lot of that shit, looking back on it as a grown person, it's really like a death cult. These people can't wait until the world ends so they can go to heaven. I was like, wow, that really took me back for a second. And this was very enlightening because, like, it had me thinking, what is your relationship with spirituality and religion? And what role, if at all, does your music play in you exploring your spirituality?
I think making music is a very spiritual process. It is. I'm not assigned. I don't assign to like a particular religion or like house of spirituality. I see connections in like a lot of things that may not seem connected. I see jewels of like goodness and truth and a lot of different like ideas and philosophies, spiritual systems. So I'm open to a lot of things. I'm paying attention to. I'm feeling a lot of things. I'm feeling a lot. You know, that's important in like the practice of like creation, any kind of creation. But you know, speaking for like music creation, it's important to be open and to be sensitive. And when you're talking about things like that, you're talking about, you know, spiritual matters. Yeah, that's that's my thing spiritually. You know, I was raised within a particular, you know, Black Pentecostal Christian, you know, house of worship. Like that's where I came up, and that's where I first experienced or like understood like ideas of like God and the nature of life. And so yeah, like what I said in that Cabbages interview is just how like I interpreted like my experience like as a grown person. As a kid, I didn't really have like a say in like, oh, I'm not gonna go to church. Like it just was, it's just what we did, you know what I mean? And even when I became of age to even question these things, you know, it really wasn't happening. So just being a person of just like with the nature of questioning, like things didn't always make sense to me. So I'm gonna ask questions. I'm gonna ask questions about like what I'm doing every week on a Sunday, you know? So I don't know. I feel like I just didn't get the answers that I wanted, or I didn't feel settled on like, this is the concrete answer. This is the reason. I just didn't believe it. So that just kind of led me to like explore other things, and just again like just being open to a lot of different like ideas of spiritual ideas. So yeah, I mean, it's just my interpretation of like I mean, it kind of is what it is, we're the idea of like born into this world but not being of this world, because this world is going to hell. Right? And you're God's favorite, so you're going to heaven, right? So like, why are you trying to slow down the timer to destruction? Like, why? Like, yo, don't you want to get this thing going?
Yeah, for real.
And at its core, like that's really what that shit is about at its core, you know? So, and that it gets really like, depending on where you're at in the world, because like Woods can tell you also stories of like, maybe certain members of his family with like a very similar like idea of like God and the world, and like backwoods Jamaica, like rural Jamaica, you know what I mean? Or it extends, wherever Christianity touched down, there are folks that really take, extreme views of this kind of thing. And like, yeah.
I mean, I really like the way you talk about these topics, especially because, it's definitely touchy, but it's also something where at the end of the day, neither of us, there's no factual, we can't deal in facts. It's all just, what you feel, what you kind of just feel you're in tune with, but we all don't know. Like I feel like I'm similar in a way that I feel like I'm generally agnostic. Like I don't claim to know, but
Yeah.
I like the way
I just
you
have a
talk.
problem when people who like, that where if we could establish that baseline that we know there's no factual,
Right.
you know what I mean? So that means that I can't impose my beliefs on someone else. I can't make someone do or be or feel a certain way if I actually believe that that's our baseline. You know what I'm saying? And that's when my issue came with a lot of like, Christianity, and it's always trying to impose your shit on other people who don't believe what you believe. It's a big problem for me, just ideologically.
Yeah, and I think your music and the way you kind of write generally lends itself well to this kind of topic because it isn't coming from this like really direct and like imposing this, no, it's not true, or it is true, or this is not true, or this is right, this is wrong. You kind of just explore it, you kind of pose it in an open way, and we as a listener can kind of just take that and be like, oh, that's interesting, and then but you're not like forcing me to agree with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And and the way you do it, especially with all the poetry and your rhyming generally, it just adds to the kind of impact I feel.
As you were talking, like I just kind of like thought of this, and I thought of this before, but also like, again, like where I'm at, like my age, my influences, I've seen this type of rap that you're talking, the preachy rap. I've seen it be like just trashed. You know what I mean? I've seen it praised and I've seen it trashed. I'm trying to learn from maybe some of my elders' mistakes. You know what I mean? Like there's a line that people are towing when it comes to like sort of like preachy versus kind of like free sort of rap. And I don't ever want to be like that preachy guy.
Yeah. And I think as Armand Hammer, like when we put in Woods to this, I think you guys work really together, well together, especially on this topic, because you do it in the way that I just described, very open, very like deeply poetic and abstract. And then Woods kind of like, if he wants to touch on these, like he'll have lines like that are like Christianity's cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
He does it with like that classic like dry humor, and I just feel like you both
Yeah.
aren't like being preachy, you both aren't like making me feel stupid, but it kind of has a similar effect that it makes me think, but in different ways, which I think is just really dope.
Sure, man. That's dope, man. Thank you.
So one of the things, it would be remiss if we don't mention it, like I Told Bessie, this album sounds phenomenal. It's not just all about like your lyrics.
Willie
Like it's
Green!
really, yeah, Willie Green recorded at the Greenhouse, mixed and
Yeah,
mastered
it's
there.
also one of the first. It's not the first. We did the Nostrum Grosses record, top to bottom in there. But like solo record, my first solo record, top to bottom recorded was Willie Green.
That's great. And it sounds like it. And when we look at the production credits, as we kind of talked about earlier, there's no beats truly produced by you, but I have to imagine, as a great producer yourself, you were still very involved in the musical decisions related to this project because, from like the flows of like how sounds kind of went into one another, there's a meticulousness to it all that feels very intentional. So, how did you work with Green and the other kind of producer collaborators to craft this final sound that we got on I Told Bessie? And like, what was the sound generally that you were going for?
I wasn't really sure. I wasn't really sure at the beginning. I don't know if I really make music in that way, starting with an idea and then all my decisions after are trying to like support that first decision.
Interesting.
It's usually like more random and just like it just really just takes a sound or a loop or it doesn't take much to like start the inspiration. I think one of the first songs that was done, the first couple of songs that were done, Child Actor kind of like sparked it. Child Actor sparked I Told Bessie. Spelling and Split Tongue. There may have been another song in there, but those two stand out to me right now. Spelling and Split Tongue. And something about like the looseness of Split Tongue is what drew me to it. It was spacious. And I knew that I wanted to like maybe use my voice in this particular way of like singing and harmonizing on that track. And that allowed those sounds just like really drew it out. And then I kind of had like the running, say what you say thing. That was pretty quick. But yeah, once we did Spelling, I kind of knew I'm like really working with something here. And yeah, I just kind of get a lot of freedom. Like people just kind of like just send me things and then I'll just make a demo like in the house. Then if I like it, and after a couple of weeks, I don't know, I would go to Green and have like 7 or 8 different songs written and I'll just go in there and record them, 4 or 5 hours, just record everything, try out different mics, trying like little effect things, just trying to like, sculpt the song into a particular mood, It was really cool, like working with Green in that way, face to face. Things get done quicker. I could do it at home or somewhere else. But, working with someone like Green, like you just kind of develop this kind of like communication style and language about how to like go about it. And things just become done quickly. Then sometimes like I'd even take like some songs home and I take my vocals and I might start at home do like post-production things. It's things that I've always do for like solo records or Armand Hammer records, which is like I got my own chisel out and it needs to sound this way. The drop needs to come here. This needs to be here. You know what I mean? Just like touches, just flourishes, just to make the song, that final song that everyone hears, that hopefully they're responding to.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier that with like the Bunny Chow, when we were talking about Bunny Chow earlier, you mentioned that Green made the beat sound bigger. Just generally, I've had the pleasure of speaking to a ton of Backwoodz artists on this show. And when we get to the topic of Green, it's always something very flattering and speaks to the impact that his presence and his work on a record is. And so could you describe like how truly different does like a song sound before and then after he does his mixing and mastering that he does to a record? Like how is it really as like crazy different as we imagine?
That'd be interesting. I could definitely do like a head to head. Maybe I'll do something like that on social media. Just like, all right, y'all, this is what the song sounded like as soon as you recorded it. And this is what it sounded like after it was mixed and mastered.
That would be amazing.
And I think like, the songs sound bigger, right? Like, I mean, Willie Green is just like a genius. He has a genius ear and he knows what he's doing. But like, the tools that he has are what everyone has in their computer. If you know how to EQ, you know how to EQ. If you know how to compress, you know how to compress. So it's just like in the demo, like things don't have their own space. Like the vocals might be fighting with the bass. So it sounds weird. You know what I mean? Or this part of the beat is way higher and I can't hear this other part. So things need to be balanced, before like things are mixed. But yeah, Green just has this particular ear. Like, I think it comes from like, he doesn't mix just rap music, right? So like Willie Green can mix pop music. Willie Green, I believe, was a Grammy nominated for like a gospel album, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
Mixing like a gospel album. It's like Willie Green, you know, he just has a particular ear. So he has this idea of like hi-fi hip hop. You know what I mean? I think it really makes a difference in Armand Hammer music because, like, obviously, like our shit has a lot of words. We want to be heard, and also people their ears or our ears are trained to like hear. Well, if you listen to underground rap, your ear is trained, you hear it in a particular way. And like, sure, there's been great hip hop mixes, but there's a lot of bad mixes or just average mixes for the type of rap that we do, right? Like we want shit to ring out. We don't want it sounding dirty. We don't want it sounding muddy. Like that's never been like our goal. And that's been the goal for a lot of like hip hop music makers.
Yeah.
It's got to be grimy. It's got, that's not really like our, you know, it's not our thing. And I think in a live show, you hear, I know you feel those beats. I know how you feel how they bang. You know what I mean? Like it does. It just does because of like what Willie Green does, you know? It's just like a master talent.
Yeah, it's like you guys make hi-fi gritty hip hop. It's like kind of a contradiction, but it's not. And that's actually
the sounds within the beat may be like dirty because I recorded it on an iPhone, right? The fidelity is already low. But Willie Green will make it so that it's like still pleasing to the ear. Like that's, I don't know, man. Mixing and mastering, especially, is like it's a particular brand of source.
Oh yeah, it's a different kind of brain. Like because you guys have like that gritty attitude that kind of harkens back to those artists that you're kind of referencing about who really wanted that to be grimy, but it doesn't actually end up sounding like it, but it has the essence. It's a mind fuck, but it's great, and that's what we've all come to love. And just generally with this I Told Bessie album, I mean, this sound, I'm going to make a weird comparison now, but I think it makes sense, is that I feel like the sounds you ended up kind of putting together for this record, it kind of incorporates a lot, like runs the gamut of like the things you've previously done, while also adding a bunch of new flavors to it, and all kind of just like blending it to this like really refined, synthesized feel. It reminds me of what Kanye did with Dark Twisted Fantasy. Like he took the kind of like gospel kind of chipmunk stuff, like that soul sampling. He added like the 808s, auto tune stuff. But then he also added this like the grand orchestration from Late Registration, and then added like this prog rock shit that he was on at that time. And I feel like it sounded amazing. I love that album. And I feel like you did a similar thing in the sense that you just kind of took all the best shit you've ever done and added some new shit. And it's like, I think the best thing you've ever done too.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I feel like, you know, there's a certain type of restlessness in like my musical like brain, where it's just like, you know, especially within the since Save Yourself, you know, I feel like a record should really show growth. A record should show like things that you've been through. And it's not just like my life is gonna come out in the lyrics, you know, like, but also just like shit I've been feeling sonically, things I've been listening to, things that I've like processed in my way, and like, yo, I could flip it like this way for my record. I'm gonna try and do that. You know what I'm saying? And like hope that people like respond to that. But yeah, I just think it kind of just shows like my own musical like interests, my own musical like sensibilities, which I've always, again, like in the past 5 years, it's on every record that I've been involved in. But like it's a group record, so it's not about me and like what my solo contributions. It's not about that. But like my solo album, everybody should know like I did this, you know? I did this with these people, and we do what we did.
Okay, and before we wrap up here today, like I wanted to ask just a kind of a different stray question from one of my patrons on the show.
He's got patrons. That's fire.
Yeah, I got patrons. And this is actually someone that you've spoken to recently. It's Dano from Freemusicempire. Love that guy. And he asked a really cool question, and I think it'll be a fun one. He asked, what are your 5 favorite Backwoodz releases? But you can't, to be fair here, you can't name any of your records or Armand Hammer ones.
5 favorite? I want to go with Shrapnel because I produced it.
Oh, okay. I guess that counts. But that's kind of cheap. That's kind of cheap. We'll keep it. Love that album.
I'm gonna go with the Steel Tip Dove album.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Fielded Demisexual Lovelace. I'm gonna go with Woods Hiding Places, and also Today I Wrote Nothing.
Today I Wrote Nothing. That's an interesting one. That's not the one that a lot of people put up amongst his favorites. I find that one's not as popular. That's
It's
interesting.
not.
What why is that one one of your favorite Woods ones?
I executive produced that album.
Interesting.
And I did that during the making of Save Yourself. Yeah.
Oh damn. Yeah, that one has a real like it does feel different than all his other records. Like it's the most disparate kind of like I don't know. There's a beauty to kind of how many different ideas. I mean, though I like the title's genius. Like Today I Wrote Nothing. It kind of like adds to that, plays off that. Just like there's a bunch of ideas here. It's a great record for sure.
Yeah, man.
And okay, so I want to give you the opportunity now just to kind of shout out, any fans of yours listening. Like, what are the new or upcoming Elucid activities, projects that we should know about that people should be looking forward to?
Oh shit, man. I don't know. I'm gonna be in LA. I'm gonna be in LA next week on Monday on the 1st. I have a live show. I don't know if you're gonna see much touring from I Told Bessie, but I'm gonna do what I can do. So this is it's the second show. We did in New York. It's a great show. Shout out Soul Glow, DJ Haram, Fatboy Sharif. Love Sharif.
Love Sharif.
Yeah, man. So yeah, LA on the 1st, we fire. I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't done much music making, not as much as I would like, but there's some things coming. There will be some things coming within the next year and a half or so. I think we'll be pleasantly surprised. Yeah.
Okay. And I saw in that recent Backwoodz newsletter that you have a web store going live on your Bandcamp. I don't know if it'll be live by the time this airs.
By Monday, it should be up.
Okay, so by the time this airs, guys, it should be out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just some things I have that I think people would like, and that'll be the place for all sort of like elusive solo, kind of merch things. Yeah.
It's exciting, man.
Long time coming. I'm surprised I haven't done it, but yeah, here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. Man, I love what you do. I really appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, Rohan. Thanks for talking to me again. Yeah.
Really appreciate what you do, and just keep doing what you're doing. And I think more and more people are kind of getting in tune and tap back into the previous work. There's a lot of great stuff before Haram and Bessie. I promise anybody listening here to do that.
I mean, like people like you is like kind of like stoke that fire, feed that fire. Y'all just out here just like really listening and enjoying, and then like telling everyone else, and like that's just the best. That's just the best. That's what every artist kind of wants and needs, especially in this time. You know what I mean? So for real, thank you for fucking with us, for fucking with me.
I'll leave it there. That means a lot. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
You too, man. Peace.
So there we have it. Another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. Big shout out to Dano of Freemusicempire, Levi, Mahima, Jeff, Mitch, Dash Lewis, Pancake Cleaner, Trey, Noah, Justin, Brandon, Joe, Gavin, Matt, Teddy Faley, Jackson, CN, Slumber Logic, Fatman Tomb, and Khalid for your generous support through the Patreon. I really appreciate it. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.